All right, YouTube, this Detroit's HPTV back at you with another video. And we got to talk about Carmelo Anthony today. If you're not familiar, Carmelo Anthony is a young black teenager who stabbed another white teen at a track meet. And it has been so racialized that people are choosing sides based on their emotions, based on the fact that, as I stated in my introduction, racism has been monetized. You got people like Al Sharpton, Ben Crump, Jasmine Crockett. You got Jamal Bryant. You got all these people that claim to represent the so-called black community, and they want you to be angry. They want you to be angry because the police and the district attorney and the people down in Texas is prosecuting that young man. And they prosecuting him because there was a crime. Now, why am I having this topic? Because young black males, they take each other's lives every day in Detroit, in Chicago. Good morning, KD, in California, uh, in Philadelphia, all through New York, the Bronx, Harlem, everywhere, Atlanta, Alabama, Mississippi. Our young men are taking each other's lives at an alarming rate. They're not only taking each other's lives, they're taking the lives of women and children are falling victim to this violence. Now, somebody is benefiting from this. We the people blame. We the people out here this morning, we're going to talk about it. So, what I'm saying, there's no outrage. There's no outrage when we do things to each other. The only time there's an outrage is when it can be monetized. And that's when you see the lawyers like Ben Crump, and they come out of nowhere, they want to sue. You have Al Sharpton, he want a photo op. But in all actuality, they there for the money. Because if they cared about black lives, they would be protesting in the streets of Detroit. They would be protesting in the streets of Chicago. They would be protesting in the streets of New York, in Atlanta, and everywhere you see these young people losing their life. What up, David? But they don't protest it unless it has a racial element. That racial element allows them to monetize and the posture and to threaten officials and to threaten communities with civil unrest. But they never do that on any other day when it can't be monetized. You know, they came up with names calling young men Pookies and Ray Rays. You know, now they call them YNs because they're targeting this generation because for real, Generation X dropped the ball just like the baby boomers. But Generation X, it was attacked with a wave of narcotics and drugs and guns and media that portrayed our communities in a certain way that made it look like a war zone. that made it look like it was dangerous. You know how many young children are going to school right now afraid that they can lose their life just going to school? That's real. That's not something that somebody is uh, making up, or it's not hyperbole. It's real talk. These young people are growing up in violence. All the movies they like are violent. All the music they like is violent. So they've embraced violence as a part of the culture. And you see it on both sides of the ethnic line, so to speak. But in all actuality, it's a failure on the parents. It's a failure on the communities because we turn a blind eye to it, or we so quick to forget when it happens in our community until somebody can monetize and make it nationwide. Then it becomes a problem. Then you got somebody to be mad at. They want to talk about slavery like they've been there. You know, I was born in the 60s, and they've been talking that same talk since I was a kid. Since I was a kid. My grandma used to say, since Hector was a pup, they've been talking and playing on the emotional heartstrings of entire community for decades. It makes money. They get you all in your feelings, and you think that you have a real enemy that's holding you down and oppressing you. But we holding each other down. We are oppressing each other. You look at the millionaires that may come from the Black community. The first thing they do when they get some money is they go buy the biggest cars and the flashiest jewelry and the fanciest clothes so that they can come right back to the ghetto, right back to the projects and showboat and flex, stir jealousy and animosity. But that's culture. That's what they've made us accept as culture. Like there wasn't a Harlem Renaissance, or like we didn't listen to jazz. You know, in Detroit, everybody that's Black, this family has been here for decades. Our origins is in Black Bottom. Black Bottom is an area close to downtown in the east side of Detroit. And it's close to the river. But it was an area that was designated just for Black people that were coming up from the South during the migration when people were running from Jim Crow, running from the Democrats because they was running from Jim Crow. And it was being redlined as soon as they got up north into areas where they were stacked on top of each other. They made it work. They made it work. In Black Bottom, you had Black men owning barbershops and juke joints. You had Black women that were maids, and when they weren't being maids, they were ironing clothes and cleaning up in their own communities. We owned the stores. We created fashion down in Black Bottom. But at the end of the day, once it got too prosperous, I-75 was built straight through it. And they dispersed those original people that was down in Black Bottom through all parts of the city. Most of them went to the west side. Then that became a ghetto because everywhere we went, the funding would leave. The educators would leave. The school system would fail. once a certain amount of black people went there. But as a community, why we get so mad about that and we don't take responsibility for teaching our own children? I don't send my grandkids or would send my children to school to be taught Black history anyway. They learn Black history at home. They learn about their grandparents and what our history was from the elders. We got away from that. Somebody told us that it was better to let the very people that you call your enemy educate your children. But why you don't take responsibility for it? They're your children. These are our communities. But every time our communities start to get strong and we have a sense of self, they want to talk to you about slavery. They want to talk to you about oppression. They want to put you right back in that same mode. Like you're not going to have rainy days with your Sundays. Like you're not ever going to be in a situation where the day not just going right, but they give you someone to blame. Why do they do that? Because you can't rule united people. People that are united, that's a problem. So the main thing the powers that be in the status quo have to do is create division. Make you feel that you're being attacked. Make you feel that you're being oppressed. But in all actuality, aren't you free? You know you're free. If you're free, you wouldn't be listening to me and I wouldn't be talking to you if we was not free. Good morning as y'all coming to the chat. But you want to continue along this path of being misled. You think about our people were finna vote Kamala Harris in the office because she said she cooked collard greens in the bathtub, which is a no-no in the Black community. You go to somebody's house and they cooking collard greens in the bathtub. They got chitlins in the kitchen sink. You know what I mean? You might go for the chitlins in the kitchen sink, but the collard greens coming out the bathtub is a no-no. You're going to reject that outright. But she couldn't get her story right because that's what they think of us, these politicians. So the reason that I was pro-conservative when it came to Trump was because I was not going to vote for terminating pregnancies up until the 8th month. I was not going to vote for the transgendering of children. I was not going to vote for leaving the border open and the hordes of illegal immigrants from prisons and insane asylums from all over South America were flooded into our community to destroy us, to create a whole entire voting block where we had no say-so. So now people are waking up to a lot of different things going on in their government, because that's one thing that you could give Trump credit for is now you paying attention. They talking about Elon Musk and him doing this audit and different things that is going on in government. You're paying attention now. They got your attention. And even now with having your attention, you're not following the money. USAID being closed down, FEMA gave immigrants $50 million for housing while you suffered. but they still want to tell you Trump bad. And a lot of people believe it. You had a lot of these ninjas and Negroes that fought for the Confederacy, that fought for their masters and fought for their bosses because they didn't want to be free. And it's the same mentality. They uplift somebody like Al Sharpton, put him in front of you. He'll keep you on the plantation indefinitely because that's his bread and butter. That's how he makes his money. He makes his money by being a fake leader who misleads you and guides you into psychological chaos, emotionalism, pandering. They pander so much to black women because black women were the cohesive force in the community. They kept their man home and they kept their children underfoot. And they had their girlfriends and their friends that did the same thing. And they was the glue. So you take the man out of the house and you move the glue and you see families scattered into the wind. You see older men scared of young men. These older men, they're scared of these young men because they know that these young men are so emotional. They'll take your life. It's all you got to do is offend them, and they'll take your life because they don't even value their own. And you'll see them like on shows like the first 48, crying before they go to prison and all of that. But they'll take your life. And this Carmelo Anthony with this young white guy, Mescap, is being exploited. There may be racial components because it's getting to the point to where certain ethnic groups don't really like other ethnic groups. They don't really like them. They don't like to live around them. They have mixed ideas about what culture and what community is, but that's okay because you don't have to go to war with them. But in our community, we at war with ourselves. And you have these race baiters telling you consistently that there's no upward mobility. The white man is keeping you down. When in all actuality, it's them. It's your constituents. Not your constituents, because that's what we will be considered, but it's the people that we vote in office. Soon as they get there, they start betraying you. They start looking at other things that they can attach their name to, like building up a downtown or building up another building, but you don't see any of them building up communities where black people live, where they have you so emotionally attached to personalities that you get mad if somebody criticizes somebody you like. It's almost like, to give you an example, if somebody say LeBron James is the greatest basketball player, and somebody else said, well, no, it's Michael Jordan. And they argue with that. They argue with that because that's more important than arguing about who you sent to Congress and why. You'll look at the average liberal person, and I have older guys my age consider themselves Muslim. And they so Muslim and so pro-black that they were voting for termination of pregnancy to the 8th month, the transgendering of children, amalgamation through open borders, and the erosion of their own communities, just on identity politics. How conscious is that? How woke is that? That you have people saying, go back to Africa and this Pan-Africanist agenda, right? I want y'all to Google this guy named Samuel K. Doe. Samuel K. Doe. Google Samuel K. Doe and Google information about Liberia. In the 1800s, they sent a lot of black people back to Africa. In the 1800s. That's how Liberia was founded. Do you know what those black people did when they got back to Liberia and in Africa? They went to oppressing the Africans and they made themselves royalty for decades. They had just come from slavery in the United States, freed and sent to Africa, gave help to build up Liberia, and they turned right around and started enslaving and oppressing the natives over there. And then, after years of this, their whole family and bloodline was executed by Samuel K. Doe and Liberian revolutionaries. That's what they think about you Yankees going back to Africa. I just was watching about the guy Nathaniel, that's the leader of the Hebrew Israelites. He went over to Kenya a couple of weeks ago, and he went to Kenya and he was preaching that Jesus is black and the black man is now mind you, this guy's in Africa, right? He's American and he has this vision of what Africa is. So he goes back to Africa and he takes his group over there and he starts teaching his group that Jesus is black and all these different things. Guess what they did? The Africans in Kenya, they stoned him and they stoned his group. They got biblical. They picked up big bricks and stoned them and ran them out of their town because racism has even creeped off into religion. You have religious people who are racist. Remember, they called them the Christian Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. So at this point, do we exhibit racism? Because I know personally, a lot of black people will call a white man as old as me a white boy. I would be offended if you called me a black boy. I'm 59 years old. I would be offended if you called me a black boy, even when I was in my 20s. Look at that. That was them black boys down there. I'd be like, I ain't no boy. That's offensive. But we say white boy like it ain't nothing. White girl. We say all that. And then everything becomes blown out of proportion when we start race baiting. But as I've told you, there's a profit in that. There's people who make money off of that. And you've seen them over the years. They'll come to you in many forms. They'll come to you talking about, we used to build pyramids and we kings and queens. Well, let me tell you the truth about that. Didn't no kings and queens get off no slave ships. If you got off a slave ship and came to the Americas, kings and queens sold you into the slave trade. That's how you got here. So didn't no kings and queens get off the slave ship and get off the boats here. The ones that got off the boat here were already conquered in Africa and already had been sold like property by Africans. And a lot of times people ask me why I don't talk about reparations and I don't get into that movement. That's not my genre or my forte because it don't make sense to me if you're only going to sue the United States and you're not going to sue Africa. or the Arabs that created the transatlantic slave trade. If you just want to sue and get reparations from where you are right now, that's why it won't win. It won't win until you take it before the world court and drag Africa off into this situation. It's almost like in the community, you'll see drug addicts, and you want the drug addicts out your community, but the police wants the person who's selling the drugs even more. That's the biggest threat. So if there was a slave trade, you wouldn't think that the person that was actually selling the slaves to Europeans is a culprit, or the Arabs that created eunuchs in the slave trade. So you just want to attack the country that you've been in, and your great great grandma and everybody been here fighting alongside other patriots in this country. You want to hold them to task, but when you go to Africa, you want to kiss they behind, and that's why they stoned them Hebrew Israelites. They stoned them Yankee boys that went over to Africa. They might as well have been playing Kendrick Lamar in the background for them over there, saying, "You're not like us." That's what they should have played for them. You're not like us. They're not like us. They should have been playing that, because people have romanticized with the idea of going to a motherland where they were conquered and sold off as slaves. So you going back to what? Embrace what? Embrace another form of oppression, another form of segregation, another form of marginalization by another group of people who don't claim you or embrace you. But I guess you would think that way if your so-called leadership here in this country always telling you how oppressed you are, always telling you it's the white man you should fear, when it's your own kind taking all the lives here. But you won't address that. You won't address how many young people in your own community are taking each other's lives daily. But you'll get up in arms when two teams on the other side of the country do the same thing, but there's a racial component. That's terrible to even be like that. That's pitiful. Because at the end of the day, you forget that both of them were 17-year-olds. Both of them was teenagers. But that racial component is what you fixate on. You fixate on that because you need somebody to be mad at. And they playing on you. They making you a collective group of narcissists. I got a guy saying, I'm surprising him with all these white man talking points. He a racist. He ain't gonna do nothing. He gonna go to work. Who you work for, Beezy? Who you work for? Who you work for? If you just might not be a Caucasian or Asian. He said, then leave America or fight. What you gonna do? You gonna fight? Strap up, come out your door. It's in the morning and get busy. Take down your oppressor. The person that's oppressing you, go get at him. Other than that, shut up. Just shut up. If you ain't gonna do nothing, shut up. You're gonna go right to work where your white boss is in charge, and you're gonna act like you ain't even said this. Who you work for? See, what I'm talking about. He thought he was saying something slick, and Talking about I got white man talking points. How? How? I'm 59 years old. He could, if he had to walk in my shoes, he'd off himself. If he had to go through any of the things I went through. I'm just saying, if you ain't gonna do nothing, shut up. If all you want to do is make other people anxious and fearful and scared and mad, but you ain't gonna do nothing, that's the problem with leadership. That's the problem with running your mouth. That's what we talking about. How racial trauma has become a lucrative business and pain monetized in the Black community. He get in there and know he finna go clock in his boss way. And he gonna say, yes, sir. But he get in here and say, I got white man talking points. That tell you got a sick, brainwashed mind. He say people who leave are cowards. This my country. You sit in front of a camera making an excuse for anti-Black racism at 59. That's pitiful. If this your country, then fight for it. I ain't making no excuses for nobody. What I'm saying is going over your head, because you sitting here trying to go back and forth with me, but I know you have a white boss. And I know that for you to still be crying racism and ain't done nothing, you a coward. You a coward. You ain't put in no work. You a coward. You glad you can't show your face on a camera. You be one of them ones fired. You know how they got them people that get on the internet and say something they ain't got no business, and the next thing you know they fired. He one of those. Because who in this chat that knows me think I come on here with white man talking points? I got my own talking points. What? I carried a 4.0 for 5 years in political science. I know what I'm talking about. I don't got no color for talking points. My talking points are my own. They come from living, studying, observing human nature. He the main reason that these type of messages are needed, because we don't have no unity. So it's like people is just being rabble rousers, but ain't gonna do nothing because they know they don't even have the unity to stand up. He said, I can cam up, you usually don't, but today is a whole all lives matter rant. All lives matter. They don't. He think he's saying something slick. All lives don't matter. The only lives that matter is Black people lives. I can't tell, because in Detroit, Chicago, and everywhere they live, all they do is take each other's lives daily. Daily. So who does it obviously it don't matter to them. So what is you talking about? You a racist without no teeth. You a snake without no fangs. That's how I see you. You are a snake without no fangs. A dog without no teeth. All you can do is bark. And you bark to your people, but you don't never go bark to that person that you say is the enemy. You don't say none to them. That's the problem. That's the problem with you Negroes. Y'all want to be revolutionaries in the closet. Y'all closet revolutionaries. You closet revolutionaries. Yeah, armchair revolutionaries. Talk crazy and talk reckless, but ain't gonna do nothing. Gonna go straight in there and work for his white boss. But he want to attack my perspective or my opinion on how our people are played with emotionally. They're not focused on reestablishing a nuclear family. building up communities. Yeah, tell Beezy to boycott Target with the rest with Maxine Waters and the rest of the old ladies and the old biddies. That's what they need to do. Go do another boycott or a protest and shut up and get out my comments. Get out my live. Exit stage left. I don't deal with no teethless, toothless animals. You all bark and no bite. All bark and no bite. And that's one of the problems I have with them is they want you to be all in your emotional state and thinking angry and thinking outside the box, but they not gonna do nothing. I'm telling you, people been talking the same type of hustle since I was a kid. I've watched it for over 50 odd years of the same talk. And it has us on a spiral going backwards. We're going backwards as a people. When the last time you seen a protest about what's going on in our own communities? But we keep voting and sending people off to represent us at Congress. And the slickest thing they can do is race bait. They race bait to these people that they call their own. And these people live in a community where they don't own anything. Leasing a car, renting a house, working for somebody else. How that ain't slavery or close to it? These people, he said, I got white man talking points because he ain't never thought about building nothing for himself, educating his own children, minding his own business. Who out there in the chats care about who don't like them? If somebody at your job don't like you right now, you still gonna go to work? You might get in the Uber and the Uber driver immediately don't like you. Look at him. He got time today. A closeted revolutionary is more significant than a man spitting mixed message out to a people. I think logical. I haven't said anything illogical. Some of your followers agree. First of all, I don't expect anybody to always agree with me. I have opinion. And I can voice my opinion, especially on my own platform. So why you got a problem with that? You got an opinion, but I don't see you putting any solutions or anything logical in the chat. You just keep attacking my message. But you ain't put a message in there. Put a solution in there, and maybe you will change my opinion. Maybe you will win the day, Beezy. Stop attacking me and put an opinion in the comment with an idea. Yeah, he benefit off the chaos. He chaotic because he could be taking the opportunity to educate whoever in the chat. But what he wants to do, he figured if he attacked me instead of attacking my opinion and my perspective, what makes what I'm saying a white man's talking point? That's what I'm trying to figure out. That's what they do if you have a conservative view. They want to call you Uncle Tom and say you all this because you think conservatively. That's how brainwashed they is over there on the Democratic plantation. That if you don't think like Master told you to think, then you a problem. This podcast and this is about everybody's perspective. It ain't just about mine. Do other people may see things differently than me? These are my views, my opinion. But I'm still waiting on Beezy to put me an answer or a solution or something encouraging for the community in the chat. And he can't do it. He can't do it. He mad at me because I say, I ain't worried about nobody educating my children on Black history. They know that before they leave the house. They know that before first grade, who they are. I ain't worried about what some racist person feel against me. Why I care about that? He ain't gonna help me. He ain't gonna put no money in my pocket. So him staying away from me is best for us both. And you're right. It's good against evil. But if you pay attention, you can see that these people have been so brainwashed that they keep focusing on racism and they never understand capitalism, materialism, socialism, communism. The only racism they want them to know about on the left is racism. That's how they control them and manipulate them with their socialist and communist ideas because they know they're ill-informed. So this video was just my opinion and to see what you thought about it on this Tuesday morning. And it was great in the chats. And I don't see Beezy, he ain't said nothing else, so I guess he gone. But as always, this is Detroit's HPTV. Coming to you out of Detroit. Salute to all patriots and keep your head on a swivel. Like, share, and subscribe, and definitely support the channel. We need you over here. Peace.